Hi there, and welcome to Position 1 Power Equipment. My name's Adrian, and today we're going to look at the P6220C chainsaw, which is powered by Hyundai. I've laid the contents of the packaging out on the table for you to see. May I start by saying that it does come with a comprehensive user manual. Now, I thoroughly recommend that you read this manual before even attempting to use the chainsaw, as a chainsaw is a very dangerous piece of equipment when you don't know what you're doing. So please read the manual thoroughly. Okay, so it comes with a comprehensive user manual. The head unit itself, there will be some assembly, we shall go through that. The chain bar and chain bar cover. It actually comes with two chains, a chain for use and a spare chain. It comes with a chain file, a 2-stroke oil mixing bottle, and a very nice carry case for putting the chainsaw in when not in use to protect your equipment. And finally, it comes with a toolkit. And there are several tools inside this little zipper bag, which is your toolkit, and I'll show you what they are. First of all, we have this box spanner with a screwdriver. There are two Allen keys, one large, one small. There is a small flat screwdriver, two small Allen bolts, I shall show you where they go later, and your little bumper strip. We shall show you how that fits afterwards as well. And that's the contents of your packaging. So the first thing we're going to do is to remove the chain cover and brake handle as part of the assembly. What we need to do is make sure that the brake is off or released. And to do that, you pull the brake handle back. It will lock here, and that is brake disengaged, and forward is brake engaged. So we'll disengage the brake, and then we can undo these two bolts. So I can, using the spanner provided, just loosen these two bolts off and remove the pair of nuts completely. There we are. Now the brake handle will simply come away, out of the way. So moving on to the next step, we need to fit the bump spike. Now the bump spike fits on here over these two holes, and there are two corresponding holes in the bump spike. So using the two screws that were provided in the toolkit, we'll just start those screws off and fit the bump spike into its location. So I'll just screw them in loosely with my fingers. And using the larger Allen key of the two Allen keys in the toolkit, I'll just get the pair of them started in their position. Where are we? There we are. I'll just screw them in finger tight to start with, and then I'll tighten them up. So that's the top one home. The bottom one hole, and then just make sure that they're completely tight by using the Allen key long ways. And that's the bump spike fitted. So as you can see, the bump spike is fitted with its two screws, and the teeth are generally pointing upwards. So that's the bump spike fitted. So we're going to move on to the fitting of the chain and the chain bar. Now you'll see that there is printing on the chain bar, and to keep things simple, we'll keep this printing the correct way up. So what it's going to do is to fit in there the correct way up, the same way up as the chainsaw. If I put it on the other way, it will go on, but the writing will be upside down. But to keep it simple, we'll assume that the chain bar is going to go in the right way up, and that this is the top of the chainsaw and this is the bottom. Now you will see that there is a symbol here which shows the direction of travel of the chain. A picture of one of the teeth and an arrow pointing this way, so the chain rotates in this direction. We'll open up one of the packets of chain and fit the chain to the bar, and I'll show you which way it goes on to correspond with this symbol. So I've taken the chain out of its packaging, and as you can see, the shape of the tooth here, which is going to go on the top of the bar, matches up with this shape here. And on the tooth itself, on this silver part of the chain, there is a very small arrow between the two rivets pointing in the same direction. So that's the orientation of the chain when it fits on the bar. Now, I do recommend that when handling the chain that you wear some stout gloves, as the chain edges can be very sharp. So we'll move on to fitting the chain itself onto the chain sprocket. So again, as I said, wearing a pair of stout gloves, we'll take the chain, keeping it the same way up as we just decided it was going to go when we had the bar, and we'll hook it underneath, and you will see, if you rotate this, that it's engaged with the teeth. Now I'll just push that chain to one side and leave it hang. I'll give you a photograph of that, or a picture I should say. So as you can see, the chain is located around the rear sprocket and just left to hang there in position, out of the way, ready for me to fit the bar. So I've got the bar the correct way up, and I'm going to place this long slot over the top of these two bolts from this end, let it drop down into the position at the bottom, and then slide it fully back this way against the chain sprocket. And again, the bar will just rest there as well. So that's the chain around the sprocket and just hanging, and the bar against the sprocket and just hanging. The next step is going to be to thread the chain into the slot all the way around the outside of the bar. Again, if you're going to handle the chain, make sure you're wearing gloves. So I'm just holding the bar gently in position and lifting the chain up into the groove in the chain bar. Now I'll go all the way along, round the top of the chain, around the top of the bar, and pulling the bar out as I do the final bit, just get the rest of the chain located in the bar. Now, as you saw, I pulled the bar out to take up the slack, so the chain is now located not tight but in the groove all the way around on the bar. So the next thing we're going to do is to replace this cover loosely, as I've already done. So I'll just pull it out of the way. This pin here is your chain or bar adjustment pin, and acts upon the bar, moving the bar in and out to tension the chain, and is adjusted by turning this screw. When you replace this cover, the two bolts here are going to come up through these holes, and this pin needs to drop down in through this elongated hole here in the bottom. Not the small hole you can see, the larger elongated hole. So if I place it in position, I'll just check as I started over the two bolts that that pin drops into the hole in the chain, which it does. If it doesn't line up, it could be too far this way or too far this way. Just look at it before you start, and you may have to move it, adjust it up and down the slot slightly to get it to fit through the hole in the bar. So that's that done. So once you're happy that the pin is in the hole in the bar, you can simply replace the two nuts. So I'll put the two nuts back on. I'm going to put them down finger tight. I'm not going to tighten them up. I'm going to go down to tight with both. And then I'm going to come back a full half turn. So I know the cover is down hard home, but I know it's not tight and I can still adjust the bar in and out. So as you can see here, the chain is still very loose and is hard, not even in the slot at the bottom. So I need to adjust the bar outwards in this direction by tightening this little screw clockwise until I start to see the chain entering and taking away its slack. As you can see, it's starting to get there now, a little bit further. Now, the chain now, the bar will move up and down. The position we're looking for to check for adjustment is with the bar in this up position. And as you can see, I'm still way too slack. So I'll go another quarter turn, pull the bar up, starting to get there now. Again, when you're handling the chain, I recommend you wear gloves. I'm trying to point to things here, so it's difficult for me to show you with my gloves on. But I am used to handling these chains. I've got another quarter turn, lift the bar. Now that is about right. I may need to adjust it a little more in a moment. We'll go through that. So, now that I've got an approximate tightness for this, I'll lift the bar up and retighten the two bolts that hold the cover on. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is to rotate the chain 2 or 3 moves by hand, just to make sure that it runs freely, which it does, and recheck my chain tension. Now, I can lift that chain up quite easily, but I can't lift it up so much that the chain comes out of the groove completely. So it's a good starting point. I do suggest you rotate it a couple of times. Again, wear gloves just to let everything settle into place, and then check your tension. Now I think I could do with a little bit more on there, perhaps another 1/8 of a turn. So I've just loosened off the chain cover again, given the adjustment screw another 1/8 of a turn, tightened up the cover again, and now that's about perfect. The chain still runs freely, and I can't pull it completely out of the groove, and it easily springs back into place. So that's your starting point when tensioning the chain. So having fitted the chain, I know that everything's adjusted nicely. I'm just going to put the chain cover onto the chain because it is very sharp. Now I will say at this point that a brand new chain on a new bar will stretch quite quickly in its first 10-15 minutes of use. So keep an eye on the tension of that chain when you initially use it, and you may need to adjust it as it beds in and as the chain stretches. Once it's done its sort of initial stretch, then you probably won't need to adjust it very often, but I do say keep an eye on it when you first start using the saw, or you may need to readjust it again and tension that chain up so that it's not too slack. So that's the basic assembly of your chainsaw. We fitted the spike here, the bump spike, we fitted the chain on the bar, and we put the chain cover on. So let's talk about fuel and chain oil. The engine in your chainsaw is a 2-stroke engine, and it will run on a mixture of fresh unleaded petrol and a semi-synthetic 2-stroke oil at a ratio of 25:1. Now we do supply it with this mixing bottle, and there are some lines on here at the top. There's a line that says a quite odd number, 576.92, and another line at the top that says 600 ml. What you should do is, and be accurate with this, is fill this bottle up to the point where it says 576.92 and take your time with it, make sure you're very accurate with it. And then, once it's filled to that level with fresh unleaded petrol, fill it the further amount up to the 600 with your semi-synthetic 2-stroke oil. And that will give you a ratio of 25:1. Once you've done that, put the lid back on, give it a good shake, and that's the fuel mixed in the correct ratio of 25:1. So that's fresh unleaded petrol, semi-synthetic 2-stroke oil at a ratio of 25 parts of petrol to 1 part of 2-stroke oil. So let's move on to putting the fuel in your chainsaw. So your pre-mixture will go in through this plug here, which is the fuel filler cap. I'll bring you in on that. So I'd probably recommend lying the machine on its side for fueling. So simply unscrew the filler cap anti-clockwise and pull it out of the way. It does have a little retainer tab, so you can take it completely out, but the retainer tab stops you losing it in the field, as it were. So then, using your pre-mixed fuel, you can simply fill the fuel tank to within about 20 millimeters of the top of the tank. So having filled it up, replace the fuel cap, screw it down clockwise, make sure it's tight, and that'll be your fuel filled. Now let's move on to chain oil. So your chainsaw chain will need to be lubricated, and it does have a reservoir here under this filler cap that you can fill with chain oil. Again, it has a cap that can be removed with a little spike, but using a proprietary chain lubrication oil, you can fill this reservoir with chain oil. Once you've filled it up, replace the cap. And there we are. So having filled with chain oil, I will say that the chain must remain lubricated at all times. And the way to check if the oil is working is to run the chainsaw probably at about half revs and have a look to see if you're getting any oil spatter coming off from the chain, which you should do after a few seconds at half revs. If you're not getting any oil spatter, you need to increase the flow rate of the oil to the chain. Now this is done quite simply. Here on the underside, you will see that there is a small screw. Anti-clockwise will increase the amount of oil, clockwise will decrease. So just make sure that your chain is well lubricated at all times. So having completed the assembly, I'm going to put all my little tools, my chainsaw file, my Allen keys, my little box wrench, my screwdriver, everything back in the toolkit for safekeeping. I've got my spare chain and my user manual, and as you can see, this is the chainsaw carry case with the P1 logo. I can fit the chainsaw in the carry case, ready to take to work. So let's move on to the starting procedure for your chainsaw. I've got chain oil in it, I've got it fuel in the tank at the correct mixture, 25:1. Let's look at the controls. First of all, we have the brake here on the front. The brake needs to be on. Forward is on. Back towards you for off. Forward, that's the brake on. The chain cannot now move. Pull starter here. On off switch here. 1 would be on, 0 would be off. The choke lever and the primer bulb. So the first thing I do, brake on and prime the carburetor. So I'll probably push this maybe 6 times when I've just filled it up from empty until I see fuel in the primer bulb and I'm starting to feel resistance. Then turn the choke on by pulling it out until you feel it click and stay there. If at any time you pull the throttle, the choke will switch off again. So choke on and the switch, on off switch in the on position, number 1 down towards the machine. So I've primed it, the brake's on, the choke's on, it's switched on, I can now pull start the machine. If the machine starts or attempts to start, we need to turn the choke off. So if it starts, we then pull on the throttle, the choke will go off. After a few seconds you want to pull on the throttle and it will start to rev up. Don't fully rev it because the brake is on, but once it's running, happy days, you can then turn off the brake, rev it away and it's ready for use. If it attempted to start, just sort of hit a couple of beats and then stopped, then we need to turn the choke off. So if it attempted to start, just pull the throttle to turn the choke off and then pull start it again and the machine will start. Again, rev it gently. Once it's come to life, turn off the brake, and it's ready for use. To stop the machine, let go of the throttle, let it come to an idle, leave it for a few seconds, and then switch off on the switch. So I'll just give you a close-up on these controls. The brake is here, forward is on, back is off, pull starter is here, on-off switch here, that's on, that's off, primer bulb here, and that's the choke. And again, that's the throttle there, and when you pull the throttle, the choke switches off. So that's the controls and how to start your chainsaw. So that's it, that's the chainsaw in its case, ready for use. Well, I do hope you found this demonstration useful. For more information on this or any of our other products, visit www.p1pe.co.uk. I've been Adrian, and happy sawing.